Now we're going to turn to a completely different direction, but it is media related. We're going to now get joined here by Jesse Friedman, who's a beat writer for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Jonathan and I have not had the pleasure to talk about baseball a whole lot of sports on this program, and the thing is, we both love sports, cover it a lot, have covered the NBA Finals over the years, among other things, even the Stanley Cup. But we're really glad to bring Jesse in, who's piped in from Arizona before a Diamondbacks game. Hey, Jesse, I'm glad you could make some time for us. This is a new media landscape. You work for a company called PHNX, a company that probably didn't exist, a decade ago, and yet the conversations in the sports media landscape are being led by a lot of social companies. We see the impact Jonathan's had in Seattle on changing the discourse. I mean, he's made a huge impact, largely by using his Twitter account. Tell me about your impression now covering sports on a day-to-day basis. There was always this kind of tried and true relationship between, say, the local newspaper and these professional sports teams. Do they embrace you to the same degree that, let's say, in San Francisco, like the Chronicle and the 49ers, the Giants were kind of lock in step? Do you get that same kind of feel today as a new media guy?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it. You said we maybe weren't around a decade ago. We weren't around 3 years ago. In fact, PHNX launched in September of 2021, so we are very much the new kid in town here in Phoenix. But yeah, I would say as far as how we're perceived being, not a traditional radio station. Not a blog. We're kind of something a little bit different than what you'll find out there in the media landscape. There are definitely certain, I think people just like casually in conversations, people ask me all the time, like, oh, so like you're on the radio, right? And I'm like, no, we're not on the radio. And then they ask, oh, so you're on TV then, right? Because you have video. And ironically, today, I guess that is actually the case. But normally it is not. Normally we're on YouTube, we're on social media, we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And as you guys were talking about earlier with your conversation with TikTok, this is where people are, right? This is how you reach people in this day and age. And, the sports media world, I think in a lot of ways has been sort of resistant to that evolution, right? We have to be willing to adapt the way that we do our work to reach people where they're at today. And today, that's what that means. It means being on YouTube. It means being on social media. It means not necessarily feeling like you have to communicate using the ways that we always have, right? The mediums that we always have over the years. So yeah, I feel very fortunate to be a part of this and excited to see where it goes for sure.
So, who's ultimately the audience, Jesse, at this point? We were talking about TikTok, and by all accounts in the data, I mean, you have like 60+% of teenagers in America on TikTok right now, right? So I know you guys ultimately want to get baseball fans, but are you trying to target the next generation of baseball fans? Because I know there's been a big debate about just this fragmented media environment, right? I mean, Major League Baseball and all the other leagues are competing now with esports, video gamers. So, who are you targeting and how are you doing that right now?
I've always been, very passionate about the sport of baseball myself. Just going to games growing up and whatnot. It's always been I love basketball and football, and the other sports have their place, but baseball is by far the best in my objective opinion. So yeah, it's always been a passion of mine to try to help this sport reach more people and specifically young people, as you talked about. There's no question that younger crowds tend to gravitate a little bit more towards the NBA and the NFL here in the US. But Major League Baseball is hyper aware of that, right? That's why you're seeing things like the pitch clock. That's why you're seeing all of these different rule changes that are largely designed to make the game move more quickly, to make the game more engaging, more interesting for those younger audiences. So these are all things that I personally am passionate about. And, I feel like Major League Baseball has done a pretty good job to this point in incorporating some of those things into the game. And on the media side, it's our responsibility to follow suit, right? If we're trying to reach young people, particularly with the sport of baseball, you're not going to be able to do that, with radio, with TV, with a newspaper or just written content exclusively, right? That's not the way that people consume content nowadays. And if you want to if you want to grow a media entity or if you want to grow a sport, you have to go where those people are. And we certainly feel like we're making some headway in that regard. There's a long way to go as far as the sport of baseball, reaching younger people more and more. But I think Major League Baseball has taken some good steps, and hopefully we're doing the same.
I think baseball it has, in particular, not completely embraced some of the new media to the degree, like say, the NBA has. I know
Sure.
the NBA has been incredible at pushing out content. Obviously, I'm in the Bay Area, so I've seen the evolution of the Warriors going from basically a moribund franchise to perhaps maybe the most powerful franchise in all of global sport, which is incredible. But you get a catalyst like Steph Curry, and everything can change. Give us your perspective on like the impact you're having on the culture and the community in Phoenix. I mean, if you have discourse on PHNX, does that get to the team? Does that get to the community to the same degree, say, a local newspaper had 20 years ago?
We're different. We're absolutely different. And, every day our goal when we're in the clubhouse, when we're talking with fans, when we're engaging with players and whatnot, our goal is to make it clear that we're different. And part of that means still engaging in some of the older mediums of content creation as well. So, I'm a writer. I write stories that are 2,000 words long at times, which maybe that in itself feels like something that would engage young people, but you'd be surprised what you can do in all mediums when you're telling compelling stories, right? I think storytelling in itself, getting to know the players on a deeper personal level, is something that is absolutely timeless. That is always going to appeal to every audience, I think. But yeah, when we're out there talking with plans or talking with players and talking with people and whatnot, we like to have fun. We don't have the same guardrails that a lot of other media entities have, and I think that's a huge advantage for us. We're able to have fun conversations that maybe the radio station next door isn't allowed to have. We're allowed to go off the rails a little bit more than some of these other entities are, and I think we use that to our advantage. That those are the kinds of pieces of content that play well on social media. The bite-sized things, shorts here on YouTube have become really big. Reels on Instagram are obviously really big. Those bite-sized pieces of content are also, a huge part of what we do. And yeah, we like to have fun more than anything else. The Diamondbacks have a player named Lourdes Gurriel Jr., not necessarily internationally known, but he has purple hair. And so my co-host Derek Montilla dyed his hair purple after the Diamondbacks had an above 500 record in April, and it's sort of been the talk of everyone seemingly over the last few weeks. We've talked with Lourdes himself about it. He got a kick out of it, and we have some fun clips and whatnot of him talking with Derek about how he needs to add more volume to his purple hair and whatnot in order to really make it look the way it's supposed to. But these are just the kind of things that we like to do that are fun and engaging, and hopefully help us reach a different crowd than what Major League Baseball traditionally reaches.
Jesse, we're talking about new media and digital, but I feel like the new media and digital is here. It's not really new anymore. I mean, everything's going digital and social. I ask teenagers right now, where do they get most of their news? They're not saying the newspaper. They're not saying the radio. They're not saying the TV set. They're saying their iPhone, right? Their mobile device, and social media platforms. They're not even going to the .coms anymore or the websites. With
Yeah.
that said, you have a pretty impressive bio in the short time you've been doing this. You're now part of the Baseball Writers Association of America. I mean, that's a pretty prestigious group. I mean, that's considered old school legacy media. I mean, can I just apply and be a part of that tomorrow? Or I mean, tell me about how you kind of, got that, got into the club, so to speak. And at the same time, do they accept you in the sense where they see you as outsiders in some ways, right? I mean, tell me about that.
It's a good question. I mean, it goes back to what you guys asked initially about how we're kind of perceived by other people in the industry. That's an interesting one. As far as the process for becoming a member of the Baseball Writers Association of America, heavily depends on your outlet. It doesn't really depend all that much on you as a journalist, as much as I would love to take credit for that. It very much depends on the outlet that you work for and whether it's seen as a website that has journalistic integrity, that's not a fan website, that's producing real journalistic content, that has a lot of value. And yeah, for a while, we have a couple of sister companies, one in Denver called DNVR, one in Chicago called CHGO. Our company originally launched with DNVR out in Denver, and for a while they were not included in that group. The website was perceived a little bit differently. It was sort of cast aside as maybe being a little bit more of a blog, a little bit more of a fan site. And granted, like I said before, you're going to see things, on our website, in our shows that we do 5 days a week. You're going to see things that you won't see in other outlets. But you're also still going to see some really high quality journalism. And so for us, it's a matter of, not only do we want to have fun, not only do we want to go off the rails and do crazy things that you wouldn't see in other places. We also want to be really, really good at what we do as journalists. We want to have integrity. We want to tell stories that no one else has. We want to break news that no one else breaks. And I think the fact that we've been able to merge those two things together is what has allowed us to be well perceived in the industry.
Well, where does this go from here, Jesse? I mean, obviously, we put together this television show for a TV network that's airing on terrestrial linear TV, but we also made sure that it became a podcast to reach people throughout really the world now, and we're getting people all over the place to find this particular show. Where do you see this going with regard to PHNX and the overall company? I'm certainly intrigued by the model. Are you a threat to some of these sports networks? We heard about Bally Sports, their troubles in Phoenix. We actually had a conversation about Sinclair, which was part of this whole Diamond Sports
Right.
regime. Diamond Sports, they ended up basically splitting off and effectively writing off their investment. So Sinclair has taken a huge financial hit over their investment in Diamond Sports slash Bally's, and now there's a local TV station that has done a deal with the Phoenix Suns, and they're going to bring ostensibly Suns games back to over the air once they figure out the legal ramifications of winding up that Bally's deal. So talk about this sea change, because I think it's fascinating for someone like me who we've been creating different niches of content on free local TV, and now that seems to be coming back in earnest.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly friendly with our colleagues over at Bally Sports Arizona, and Arizona Sports, the local radio station, they're the flagship home of the Diamondbacks, the Suns, the Cardinals, the Coyotes, all the local teams. But yeah, we do like to think, maybe selfishly, that we are, a part of the future, a big part of the future, and kind of where this whole thing is headed in the long run. The reality is that things change quickly in this industry, as you both know. If you sign up to be a journalist, if you sign up to be a media personality, you're signing up to constantly evolve, right? And to constantly change how you do what you do in order to try to stay relevant and reach as many people as you possibly can. And yeah, we are seeing a lot of that already. Bally Sports Arizona, they, according to reports, have not made their rights payment to the Arizona Diamondbacks. So the Diamondbacks, as part of this whole bankruptcy process for Diamond Sports Group, have already lost a pretty significant amount of revenue. There's still certainly time for those things to be worked out, and there's bankruptcy hearings happening right now. Pretty ugly process overall. But the reality is that this is where things are headed. You're starting to see reports of ESPN starting their own direct to consumer streaming service. This is just kind of the way that things are headed overall. And yeah, in the long run, I think the biggest thing for Major League Baseball in particular is you want to make sure that people can watch these games. However this ends, you want to make sure that people can watch games, that hopefully more people can watch games than have ever been able to. Blackout restrictions have been a widespread critique of the sport for a long time. That's something that they need to find a way to work past. But it's clear that the way that that's going to happen, the way that people are going to watch these games, 10 years from now, maybe even 5 years from now, is going to look really different from the way that most people are watching these games right now. So our role is a little bit different. We're not necessarily in the business of streaming the sporting events directly to the consumer, but we're trying to be the sort of the next big thing as far as media companies and kind of our role in helping fans really get plugged into their sports teams more so than they would find on the normal TV broadcast that they're watching every day. So yeah, we like to think that we're hopefully a big part of the future and where this whole thing is headed, and I'm sure we're going to have to evolve ourselves here in the coming years as things continue to change.
Well, Jesse, I'm really glad. Actually, before we let you go, I'm glad you brought up the ESPN going to direct streaming to consumers. That's a huge sea change in news that just dropped. I mean, you could anticipate that they'd have to do that, given that is literally perhaps the channel that's keeping the cable bundle together. But if you can get ESPN individually, and I think I saw some numbers today that they're charging the cable operators roughly about $10 a month for ESPN programming. So you pull out ESPN, you see CNN's numbers are down. You see Fox News going through a transformation. MSNBC's lost some of their core personalities. A lot of these people are pivoting to their own podcasts, their own online platforms, kind of individuals, personality based programming. So there's going to be a lot of talented people out there that are creating their own forums, like you guys have there in Phoenix, and like Choe and I have done as individuals and collectively. So it's a heck of a time and a heck of an opportunity for all of us. And I think that's why we like having these discussions with people that are on the cutting edge. And before I let you go, I got to ask Madison Bumgarner, one of my favorites, got us three championships in San Francisco. He's going to get a statue probably out here. His career in Arizona didn't really wrap up in great terms. I mean, is he a Hall of Famer to you, or just not enough long term dominance to get in the Hall of Fame?
Well, he might have a statue in San Francisco, but he's certainly not going to have one in Arizona. I can tell you that right now. Madison Bumgarner's career here in Arizona was really unfortunate. I mean, it got to the point for the D-backs where they just couldn't afford to run him out there every fifth day. They have aspirations of contending this season, and they just didn't have the time to keep running him out there. It is unfortunate because he was such a legend in San Francisco, like you said, just right at the center of those World Series runs. So as far as the Hall of Fame question goes, I gotta say I don't quite think Madison Bumgarner is there. I think his peak was impressive, and obviously the playoff resume is probably the most compelling thing that will probably get him some votes. But when it's all said and done, I just think he probably needed to age better in order for the full body of work to be Hall of Fame worthy. But that doesn't take the three World Series rings away from San Francisco Giants fans, and he was certainly right in the center of that. And I'm sure Giants fans will remember what he did for forever.
And I'll be upset if I don't ask you this. So Barry Bonds, I saw that man play. Best hitter I've ever seen. The baseball writers have kept him off out of the Hall of Fame for
Let's add
reasons
Roger Clemens
beyond
to
me.
the mix. Come on, let's talk Roger
Yeah, I
Clemens.
mean,
Let's go on
you
the
can
Red
talk
Sox.
about Clemens. I mean, Clemens was fine. I mean, I think you can make more debates about Clemens. He was really good, but he started to tail off. Bonds was a Hall of Famer before allegations of taking steroids. Give me your thoughts, because you're a younger guy now with this fraternity of older baseball writers. I happen to get met. One of my English teachers was Sue Coppett, who was Leonard Coppett's wife. Leonard Coppett being a legendary baseball writer here in the Bay Area. Your thoughts now on the evolution of a younger guy like you as part of this fraternity that's voting on Hall of Famers. Does Bonds get in at some point?
Does he get in at some point? I don't know. Probably not. Does he have? Would he have my vote? Absolutely, he would have my vote. To your guys' point earlier, that was an era of baseball where Barry Bonds wasn't the only one, right? And frankly, there are other guys that may have already been elected to the Hall of Fame who were part of that group and were just never discovered. So I think you have to consider the era. You have to consider the context that Barry Bonds was in. And like you said earlier, he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, even if none of this stuff had ever happened. So I understand there are clauses in what it takes to become a Hall of Famer as far as how that's defined. There are statements in there about player character and being a person of integrity and whatnot. So I understand where people are coming from, but when you consider the context and just where baseball was at in the era that is now known as the steroid era, there's no question in my mind that Barry Bonds should be part of that group.
Well, Jesse, we really appreciate your time. Jesse's a beat writer for the Arizona Diamondbacks for PHNX. Check out his work on all these digital platforms. We really appreciate it. We'll talk more baseball. Maybe my Giants can get their act in gear, and Jonathan's Red Sox
The Red
will be
Sox.
more productive.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Jesse.